Welcome to the structured sensory analysis video for 2K Harrison Cider. A few things you might want to have along with you today, of course. 2K Harrison Cider. You will want a clean and clear glass. You'll want a spit cup. You will want your structured sensory analysis form, your possible aromas and flavors form, and a pencil. Let's get started. First off, we're going to start with just about 2 fingers of cider. Perfect. 2 fingers of cider. Now let's go to our structured sensory analysis form. And we're going to start right there at the top with, first we taste with our eyes, we taste with our nose, and then we taste with our mouth. So tasting with my eyes, I will look at the clarity, the intensity, the color, and the carbonation of the cider. Appearance section of the Certified Pommelier exam is worth 2 points in total. That is half a point for each of the elements, half a point for clarity, half a point for intensity, half a point for color, and half a point for carbonation. Okay, so for clarity, what I'm looking for is how clear or cloudy the cider is. One great rule of thumb is to put your finger on the back side of the cider and to look through, making sure to clear off any condensation if your cider is cold. To look through, if you can see your finger print, the cider is clear. If you can see your finger but can't make out the print, the cider is cloudy. And if you can't see your finger at all, then the cider is opaque. You can use the same technique with your paper. So as you look through, if you can read the writing, then the cider is clear. If you know there's writing there, but you can't read it, the cider is cloudy. And if you can't see that there is writing at all, then the cider would be opaque. Now we're going to look for intensity. This one takes a little bit of ingenuity in order to really see that. Again, we're going to utilize our paper, but now we're going to utilize the back side that's clear white. So I'm going to go ahead and tilt my glass at a 45-degree angle, looking down into the deepest part of the cider. And what I'm looking for is how far the depth of color. So we know that the color is most intense at the very center. Does that intensity remain the same all the way extending to the outside of the glass? Or does the intensity start to diminish as we leave the center of the glass? If the intensity is only in the very center of the glass, then that cider would be pale. If the intensity stems halfway out and then we have a somewhat clear or watery rim, then that intensity would be medium. If that color extends all the way from the center all the way to the edge, then our intensity would be deep. For this cider, our intensity is pale. It is most color intense right in the center. Now for color, again, we will utilize our clean white paper to better understand the color of the cider. So when we think about cider, most of the ciders will be in that yellow family, but what we're looking for is what the undertones, that helps us to better identify the exact color of that cider. So our different aspects are either straw, yellow, gold, amber, copper, pink, ruby, purple, and garnet. So there's a couple of different schools of thought here. You can either go by process of elimination, so we can eliminate garnet, purple, ruby, pink, copper right away. We can eliminate all of those. Now, when it comes to these different styles of yellow, what we're looking for are what those undertones are. So if the undertone is more green, think like a Sauvignon Blanc, then it would be straw. If the undertone is pure yellow, that would be yellow. If the undertone is more of has an orangish hue, that would be more gold. And if the undertone is quite orange, verging onto brown, that would be amber. So as you can see, this is a straw colored cider. You can see when it's put up against white, it has a slightly green undertone. So the color would be straw. Carbonation, we're going to look first at our cider to see if we see any active bubbles. And as you can see, I have just a little bit of bubbles, nothing too active. But what's really going to help me to tell the carbonation is once I get that into my mouth. So I'm going to go ahead and put my tentatively petulant because I do see some carbonation, so it doesn't register to me, to my eyes visually, as still. I also don't see a lot of active carbonation, so it doesn't register as sparkling. So I'm going to go ahead and pencil in that petalin. Now it's time for us to taste with our nose. So you see I haven't swirled my glass yet. It's really important that before we start to swirl, that we're able to get the aroma intensity. For aroma intensity, that is how close to our nose does the cider have to be before we can start to pick up aromas and flavors outside of that are just cider. Okay, so my starting point is actually just right at my chest bone. So if I'm able to hold the glass here, and if I'm able to pick up other aromas other than just having it have a cidery smell, then this would be a pronounced aroma. Next, I'll move up to just right about my clavicle. And if I'm able to pick up the aromas here, that would be medium plus. If I'm just below my chin, that would be medium. If I'm just above my chin, medium minus. And if I'm any higher than my top lip, that would be light, meaning my nose has to be very close in order for me to smell any of the aromas. So now let's do that in practice. I always start at the bottom, and sometimes it can be helpful to slightly open your mouth, put your tongue to the roof of your mouth. Okay, so I'm just at my chin when I'm able to finally get some of those aromas. So that puts me straight in the medium aroma intensity. Medium aroma intensity is right at my chin. Your anatomy can make where your spots, where it sits on your body, a little bit different. Just note that as long as you're doing it the same every time for your body, your results will be exactly the same. Now, this is the fun part when we start to dive in and really start to understand what the aromas are. This is when that front side of your possible aromas and flavors will come in handy. So understand that this is not all of the possible responses. These are simply to give your mind a jumping off point in order to help you put aromas to words. You are always welcome to put something you do not find on this list. Just note that in order to score the maximum points for this, you do need to match that of the group who has scored the exam. So putting something like the smell of ocean in spring is so subjective that no one else would ever put that on there as part of the grading key. So you want to make sure you're using things that other people would also find. This section of the sensory exam is worth 3 points. That means you would need to have 3 correctly identified aroma characteristics that the grading key also found. You are not penalized if you write down something that others didn't find. You're simply not given a point for it. Okay, so now let's give our glass a nice swirl and then get our nose right in. So I've got fresh yellow apple, vanilla, clove, lemon zest, underripe plum, white flowers, banana, pear skin. So I've already got quite a few. If you find yourself struggling with being able to continue to smell new and different things, the inside of your elbow, that reclimatizes you to your smell. So go ahead and smell the inside of your elbow and then come back to your cider. And you'll feel refreshed and rejuvenated in order to come back in and keep trying to find those aroma characteristics. So again, aroma characteristics is worth 3 points in total. So you want to find 3 aroma characteristics that match the grading key. The aroma intensity itself is worth 1 point, making the aroma section worth 4 points in total. Now, onto the palate section of the exam. This section is worth 12 points in total. So that is 1 point for each of the following: sweetness, acidity, tannin, flavor, complexity, body, and finish, and 5 points for the flavor characteristics. Okay, so now we have our cider. Let's go ahead and move on to the tasting section. So that means we're actually going to put the cider into our mouths. We're going to swirl from side to side, not like we're swishing mouthwash, but allowing the cider to come into contact with all of our palate. And then we're going to spit. Each time we do that, we're going to be looking at one question on our form. So we're going to start here first with sweetness. So our possible answers are dry, semi-dry, semi-sweet, or sweet. It is possible that a cider might fall somewhere in between. So it might be in between dry and semi-dry. It might be more commonly in between semi-dry and semi-sweet. It could happen that the forum who decides the grading key might also find that to be the case. So semi-dry or semi-sweet could be the answer. However, you as the test taker would need to write only one answer. While 2 could be correct, only one answer must be written on the page, or neither can be accepted. So with that in mind, this cider is a semi-dry cider. Okay, let's go back in one more time. I know I was talking, so let's go back in once more just so we can solidify what semi-dry feels like in our mouths. Be aware that there might be fruity esters within a cider that might make it seem a little sweeter than what it is, as fruity esters tend to trick our brains into thinking that something is sweeter. However, this cider does have some inherent sweetness, so it is in the semi-dry category. Now, acidity is something that our body will tell us what the answer is. We just have to listen. So when we take our next sip to consider acidity, we're going to count how long we actively salivate once the cider is in our mouths. The longer we salivate, the higher the acidity of the cider, because the longer it takes our mouth to get back to the pH it wants to be, which is 7. So 7 is the neutral pH. The acidity is measured by how long we actively salivate to get us back to that level. Okay, so let's go back in. I'm at about 6 seconds of active salivation. So my personal scale is high acidity would be anywhere 8 seconds or above. Medium plus acidity is 6 to 8 seconds. Medium acidity is about 4.5 to 6 seconds. Medium minus would be anywhere from 2.5 to 4. And low, anywhere from 0 to 2. To that 2.5 mark. So that would make this a medium plus acidity at that 6 seconds of salivation. Again, understand that your key can be whatever makes sense for your body, as long as you come to the same conclusion every time, that this would be a medium plus acidity cider. Okay, and now we're going to go in for tannin. How much bitterness and or astringency are we perceiving from this cider? There is some bitterness, but there is more astringency than there is bitterness, which is leading to that feeling of acidity as well. Try very hard to separate those two things away from each other. And when you're looking at acidity, look only at the active salivation. And when you're considering astringency, only that drying feeling rather than the active salivation. So this would be a medium tannin cider because it does have some bitterness and some astringency. Okay, so flavor intensity is next. Personally, I actually like to skip that one and I go right to my flavor characteristics and then I come back to my flavor intensity. So I'm going to take out again my possible aromas and flavors and have that handy to help my brain kind of jump into the flavor characteristics as they're hitting my tongue. So again, we're going to go back in. Fresh yellow apple, pear skin, pineapple, banana, vanilla, yogurt, honeysuckle, white flowers, dried herbs, lots and lots of flavor characteristics. This is, so again, worth 5 points. So 5 of your flavor characteristics must match the grading key in order to score all 5 points. And you will see that there is some correlation between the aroma characteristics and the flavor characteristics. This we would come to understand because we can only actually taste 5 different things, and that is none of the things that we listed. So aroma plays a big part in what we taste. So we would expect to see some correlation between the two. Not identically the same, but correlation. So now, flavor intensity. How intense were those flavors that we found? I like to think of this as a shape. Are they really loud and punchy, spreading out in all directions? Are they more smooth and round? This is a medium flavor intensity cider. There is some spiky, but there's also some smooth. So it is right there in the middle. Now, complexity. Actually, let's just jump back for just a second. So remember how we talked about carbonation? We can now safely say that this is a petulant cider because my palate has identified what my eyes first thought. So this, I can go back and make sure that in the appearance section, this is a petulant cider. Now, on to complexity. We can think of this in a couple different ways. I like to think of it as almost a math problem, but not quite. So what I do is I take my aroma and flavor characteristics and I look at how many of the possible aroma and flavor categories did I find examples of. So I found palm fruit, I found citrus fruit, I found stone fruit, I found tropical fruit, I found herbal, I found floral, I found spice, and I found a few secondary as well. So in terms of complexity, we would say, well, most of them were actually in this fruit category. So that's a little bit less complex. I found a few things speckled in from here, but not too many. So each time we would take away a little of the complexity and understand, again, complexity is neither good nor bad, depending on how complex something is. It's simply a statement of the varying array of flavors. So for this particular cider, this would be a medium complexity cider because most of mine are grouped up into this fruit category. And if they were only in the fruit category, this would be either medium minus or low. However, because we have some speckled in other categories, this would be a medium complexity cider. Now, body. Again, I like to think of it to start almost as an equation. So we know that the elements that make a cider's body seem higher would be sweetness, tannin, and alcohol. We don't know the alcohol of the cider. We do on this one. But if we were doing this blind, we don't know the alcohol of this cider. But in our form, we've already said what the sweetness and what the tannin is, so we can have a guess on what we think it would be, and then we can go in and we can make sure that our palate is saying the same thing that our guess would. So because this is a semi-dry cider with medium tannin, I would expect to see somewhere in that medium range of body. Let's go in and find out. We are correct. This is a medium-bodied cider. Now, last on our list is finish. How long do the flavors of cider last? Not the feelings. So no acidity, no astringency, strictly flavors. How long does the flavor profile last? And we're going to go ahead and count this out in seconds again. I'm just at about 3 seconds for how long the flavor lasts. After that, it's all acidity and astringency. So 3 seconds puts me strictly into my medium finish category. For me, anything 5 and above would be a long finish. Medium plus would be 4 to 5. Medium, 3 to 4. Medium minus, 2 to 3. Low, 0 to 2. Last on our list is final assessment. So, what do we mean when we're asking for a final assessment? What we're asking for is a 1 to 2 sentence understanding of what this cider is. Okay, I'm going to start with saying, what does this not mean? This doesn't mean that we want, I like this cider because. We don't want that. We want nothing about how you feel about it. We don't want anything about what you think the cider maker could have done in order to make this better. All we're looking for here is a short concluding statement on the cider's balance, integration, and character. If you are struggling with this, try to use those 3 words within your sentences. You'll find that you will actually be utilizing more of what we're looking for if you use the words balance, integration, and character. Along with this recording, you will also be given the completed digital forms. I'm going to go ahead and read off to you what my concluding sentence for this cider would be. Clear and pale, this straw-colored semi-dry cider's medium plus acidity is well balanced by its medium tannin. The aromas and flavors of palm, citrus, stone, and tropical fruits are well integrated to the floral and secondary characteristics. So, you see how I used all of the words in there. You can even create yourself a sentence formula and fill in the blanks for these ciders every time. You just want to make sure that if you found any flaws or faults, that you do list them here in accordance to how you found them. So we would also either need to see them in either the aroma or the flavor characteristics sections. Thank you for joining me to taste through 2K Harrison cider. We wish you the best of luck. Happy tasting. Lastly, practice makes better. I highly recommend using the resources available to you on our website and in our Facebook community. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing to our channel for all things cider education.